She ran into school, last barely keeping her balance on the stairs. Her heart was pounding from rushing, and her backpack almost falling tangled under her feet. Katia knew now every gaze would be on her. And then the impossible happened. Someone suddenly came out of the hallway, and they almost collided. Their backpacks hit, and books fell on the floor. "Oh," she exclaimed, trying to pick everything up quickly. "Sorry," he said, leaning down to help. His eyes, they were completely different from all the classmates, dark, but warm, with the same elusive sparkle that made Katia's heart beat faster. "Maxim," he introduced himself. Katia just nodded, barely saying her name. She knew one thing: this year, something was going to change. The next day, Katia noticed Maxim sitting alone at a desk. By the window, he was drawing something in his notebook, and clearly did not want anyone to see. Her curiosity was piqued. Why was he so mysterious? During the break, she accidentally sat down next to him. "What are you drawing?" she asked quietly. Maxim looked up, surprised. "Nothing special, just..." And he stopped, as if searching for words. Katia felt he wanted to say something, but was afraid, and it touched her. She understood behind his calm there was something interesting, and she definitely wanted to find out what. A week later, it rained. Katia stayed after class because she forgot her backpack. She tried to hide under the awning, but suddenly heard a familiar voice. "Did you forget something?" She turned and saw Maxim with an umbrella. He smiled, and in that moment, the world seemed warmer despite the rain. "Thanks," she said, hiding a blush. They walked together without talking, and their hearts were beating as if they understood each other without words. Katia realized these were the first true feelings she would never forget. A few weeks passed. Katia and Maxim noticed each other everywhere: in the school hallway, in class, even during lunch. They laughed together, argued about silly things, and still felt that without this connection, the day would be empty. One evening, during a school event, Maxim reached out his hand. "Shall we take a walk?" Their fingers touched, and Katia's heart raced wildly. They walked quietly, laughing and looking into each other's eyes. And this time, Katia knew her first love had become real. A few days later, they were sitting on the bench in the park. The sun was setting, and the sky was painted with orange and pink colors. Maxim turned to Katia and said, "I like spending time with you more than anything." Katia felt her heart skip a beat. She had wanted to hear these words for weeks. She smiled and whispered, "I like spending time with you too." For a long moment, they just looked at each other, feeling something they could not explain. The world seemed smaller and brighter at the same time. One afternoon at school, Katia saw Maxim talking to another girl. She felt a sudden tightness in her chest. Her mind raced, and she misunderstood the situation. Later, Maxim found her sitting alone. "Why are you upset?" Katia shook her head. "I thought you were with someone else." Maxim smiled gently and took her hand. "It's not like that. I was just helping her with homework." Her heart relaxed, and she realized how much she cared about him and how easy it was to misunderstand things when your feelings are strong. The last day of school arrived. They walked together along the empty hallways, holding hands and laughing quietly. Maxim stopped and looked into her eyes. "I have something to ask you." Katia's heart raced. "Will you be my girlfriend?" She felt a warm smile spread across her face. "Yes," she said. And they hugged tightly, their hearts beating together for the first time as more than friends. The sun shone through the windows, and they knew this was the beginning of something special, something they would remember forever. A week later, Maxim invited Katia to watch a movie at his house. They sat on the couch with blankets and popcorn. Their shoulders touched, and they both felt shy, but happy. They laughed at the funny parts and whispered small comments to each other. The room felt warm and cozy, and every glance made their hearts beat faster. After the movie, they played a quiet game of cards on the floor. Katia looked at Maxim and felt a strange happiness she had never felt before. She realized she could talk to him about anything and everything. One afternoon, they were walking home from school, and it started raining. Maxim held his jacket over both of them. They ran laughing through puddles, and then stopped under a big tree. "I think about you all the time," Maxim said quietly. Katia felt her heart pounding. She nodded silently and squeezed his hand. They stayed there for a long time, listening to the rain and feeling that nothing else in the world mattered except each other. Not everything was perfect. One day, they disagreed about something small, and both felt stubborn. Their voices rose slightly, and they walked away feeling upset. Katia sat alone on the swings, thinking about how quickly things could get complicated. Later, Maxim came running with flowers in his hand. "I am sorry. I did not mean to upset you," he said. Katia smiled and forgave him. They hugged and stayed there for a long time, letting the anger melt away. She realized even small fights could not change how she felt about him. They spent a Sunday afternoon in the park, holding hands. The sunlight passed through the leaves and danced on their faces. They talked about dream school and favorite songs. Maxim pointed out a fountain, and they laughed, trying to throw pebbles without splashing each other at one point. Katia leaned her head on his shoulder and felt completely safe. She never wanted the moment to end. They walked for hours, feeling like the world belonged only to them. One evening, Katia told Maxim a secret she had never told anyone before. She felt nervous, but he listened carefully and nodded, encouraged by his trust. He shared a secret of his own. They stayed sitting there in silence, smiling at each other, realizing they could trust each other completely. The connection between them felt deeper than ever before. Maxim gave Katia a small bracelet with her favorite color. She wore it immediately and smiled brightly. "I will always wear it for you," she whispered. Maxim laughed softly and said he hoped she would never take it off. Katia felt a warmth inside she could not describe. She realized every small gesture mattered so much. They stayed outside one evening, looking at the stars. The sky was dark and full of tiny lights. They pointed out constellations and talked quietly about the future. Maxim held her hand, and they leaned on each other, feeling safe and happy under the endless sky. Katia felt her heart swelling. She never wanted this night to end. It felt magical, as if the stars were watching over them. On the last day before summer vacation, they sat on the swings in the empty playground. Maxim turned to Katia. "No matter what happens this summer, I want to keep us together." Katia smiled and held his hand tightly. "Me too," she said. They swung slowly back and forth, feeling that their first love was only beginning. They knew nothing could break what they had found, and they promised to remember these moments forever. The first week of summer vacation started, and Katia and Maxim spent it exploring the small park near her house. They rode their bikes, racing each other and laughing until their stomachs hurt. They found a small pond and skipped stones, watching them bounce on the water. Each moment felt endless and magical. They bought ice cream from the corner shop and shared it sitting on the grass. Katia felt a happiness she had never known before. Maxim teased her about spilling a little ice cream on her shirt, and she laughed, hiding her face. One evening, Maxim asked Katia to meet him at the park after sunset. She arrived to find him holding a small handmade notebook. "I made this for you," he said nervously. Katia opened it and found little drawings, memories of their time together, notes about funny moments and things he liked about her. She felt tears of joy in her eyes. "I love it," she whispered. Maxim smiled and said he hoped she would keep it forever. Katia hugged him tightly and felt her heart beating so fast she thought it might jump out. Katia spent the night at Maxim's house for the first time. They stayed up talking about silly things and secrets they had never told anyone. They played board games and laughed until they could not breathe. Then they watched the stars from his balcony, wrapped in blankets and holding hands. Katia felt a comfort and warmth she had never felt anywhere else. She realized she could be completely herself with Maxim, and he would still care about her and love her. One afternoon, Katia saw Maxim talking with a group of friends and laughing loudly. She felt a sudden pang of jealousy and ran away, feeling upset. Maxim noticed and followed her. Katia crossed her arms and said quietly, "I thought you did not care." Maxim shook his head and gently held her hands. "I care more than anything," he said. "I was just talking to friends." Katia felt her heart soften and realized how easy it was to misunderstand things when emotions are strong. She smiled and hugged him, and they promised to always talk when something upset them. The last day of summer approached, and they walked along the beach holding hands. The sun was setting, and the waves sparkled like tiny diamonds. "I do not want this summer to end," Maxim said quietly. Katia looked at him and smiled. "Neither do I," she said. They sat on the sand watching the horizon and made a promise to write to each other every day, no matter what happens. They laughed at the waves that splashed their feet and held each other tightly, feeling that their first love was only beginning, and that nothing could change what they had shared. They stayed there until the stars appeared above and the world felt perfect.